"Choose my mama instead of me," said the little girl. The rancher wagons rattled past the mercantile, and cowhands laughed outside the saloon. Yet in the middle of it all stood a wooden platform, worn and cracked, where men with hard eyes gathered for a cruel spectacle. Maggie O'Connor clutched her daughter's hand as though her life depended on it. In truth, it did. The widow had been dragged here by her late husband's creditors, men with no hearts, only debts to collect. Her little girl, Clara, no more than 7, pressed her thin body close against her mother's side. Clara's face was pale beneath a tangle of curls, but her eyes were fierce, shining with a courage far beyond her years. She had watched her father lowered into the earth only months ago. She had watched neighbors turn their backs. And now she watched strangers circle her mother like wolves around prey. "Step up, miss," barked the man in charge, a sour-faced foreman named Yates. "We don't have all day. Folks are waitin'." Maggie swallowed hard. Her dress, once blue, was faded to gray. She could feel eyes on her, measuring her worth, judging her scars. She pulled Clara behind her, trying to shield her from the crowd. "Please," she whispered to no one in particular. "Please, Lord, don't let them separate us." A chuckle rose from the men. "What's the matter, widow? Think you're too fine? Ain't nobody here lookin' for a queen. Just someone who can cook and clean." Clara's small hand trembled in Maggie's grip. Then, to everyone's shock, the child tugged free, stepped forward, and lifted her chin. "Take my mama instead of me," she said, her voice ringing through the street. "She's kind, and she's strong. Don't take me, I'm just little. Choose her." The crowd went still. For a heartbeat, even Yates looked uncertain. Maggie dropped to her knees, pulling her daughter close. "Clara, hush, please. Don't say such things." But the girl was relentless. She looked out at the gathered men, her voice quivering yet steady. "My mama's all I got. She's the best person in the world. If anyone needs saving, it's her. Please, choose my mama instead of me." A silence stretched over the street. Then, from the edge of the crowd, a tall figure stepped forward. He was broad-shouldered, dressed in a dust-stained duster coat, his hat shadowing his eyes. The kind of man who carried the weight of solitude on his shoulders. Folks in town knew him as Luke Hartwell, a rancher who lived miles outside Dry Creek. He rarely spoke, rarely came into town. Some whispered he'd lost too much in his past to bother with people anymore. Now, Luke's gaze fixed on the child, then on her mother. Something stirred behind his stern eyes, something he hadn't felt in years. Without a word, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn leather pouch. Coins clinked as he tossed it at Yates's feet. "I'll take them both," Luke said quietly. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Maggie's lips parted, stunned. She tightened her hold on Clara. "Sir, you don't have to." But Luke was already walking toward them. He didn't explain. He didn't justify. He simply placed his hand gently on Clara's shoulder, steady and protective, as though it had always belonged there. Yates scooped up the coins, grinning. "Suit yourself, Hartwell. They're yours." And just like that, the deal was done. The wagon ride out of town was quiet. Luke drove the team of horses with practiced ease, while Maggie and Clara sat on the bench beside him. Dust swirled around their boots. Maggie glanced at him, her voice soft, uncertain. Why would you do this? You don't know us." Luke kept his eyes on the road. "Didn't have to know. Saw enough." Clara leaned against Maggie, studying the rancher. "Are you gonna send us away later?" "No," Luke said simply. "Why not?" Finally, he looked down at her. His gaze was steady, kind in a quiet way. "Because no one should beg to save their mama. Not while I'm standin' there." Clara blinked, then nestled closer to her mother, her little heart strangely at peace. By nightfall, the wagon crested a ridge, and Maggie saw the ranch for the first time. It was sprawling, fenced pastures stretching into the horizon, a sturdy barn, cattle grazing in the distance. The house itself stood strong, built of timber and stone, with light glowing in the windows. Luke helped them down from the wagon. Maggie's legs wobbled, unused to kindness. "This place," she whispered. "It's so quiet," Luke finished. "And safe." He carried their small bundle of belongings inside. Maggie followed hesitantly, her heart hammering. The house smelled of wood smoke and leather. It was neat, though not overly tidy, clearly lived in by a man who did his best but had no one to soften the edges. A single plate left on the table, boots by the hearth, books gathering dust on a shelf. Luke set down their bundle. "This is your home now. Both of you." Maggie stared at him. Her voice trembled. "Sir, I can't repay." "Don't need payment." He shrugged off his coat. "House has been too empty too long. You'll cook if you want, or not. You'll stay, that's all." Maggie's throat tightened. She wanted to believe him, but life had taught her that men's kindness always came with a price. Yet when she met his eyes, she saw no hunger, no cruelty. Just a tired honesty. Clara tugged at Luke's sleeve. "Mr. Rancher, can we have supper?" Luke's stern face softened. "Name's Luke. And yes, let's eat." The days that followed began to settle into a rhythm. Maggie rose early, helping in the kitchen, mending what she could. Luke worked the cattle, fixed fences, brought in wood. Clara chased chickens, her laughter ringing across the yard. For the first time in months, Maggie saw her daughter smile, truly smile. Yet inside Maggie's chest, a storm brewed. Each night, after Clara slept, she sat awake by the window, staring at the stars. Gratitude warred with fear. She owed Luke everything, but what if he changed his mind? What if this was only temporary? Luke noticed. He wasn't blind. He saw the shadows under her eyes, the way she flinched when his hand brushed hers by accident. He said little, but inside he ached. One evening, after supper, he found her outside, hanging laundry beneath the orange glow of sunset. "You don't trust me," he said quietly. Maggie stiffened, turning. "I'm sorry. It's not you. It's life. Every man I've known wanted something. My husband, he was kind once, but drink changed him. And after he passed, others came sniffing around. I can't risk Clara's safety again." Luke leaned against the post, folding his arms. His gaze was steady, not offended. "You're right not to trust easy. But I didn't bring you here to hurt you." Her eyes filled with tears she fought to hold back. "Then why? Why take on a burden that isn't yours?" For the first time, Luke's mask cracked. Pain flickered across his face. "Because once, I didn't step in. Didn't speak when I should have. Lost people I loved because of it. I swore I'd never watch it happen again." The wind tugged at Maggie's hair. She stared at him, seeing not just a rancher, but a man haunted by ghosts. Clara's voice called from the porch. "Mama." "Luke, come see the fireflies." Luke pushed off the post and gave Maggie the faintest smile. "Go on. She's waitin'." And as Maggie walked toward her daughter, her heart shifted. Maybe, just maybe, this silent, weary rancher was more than a rescuer. Maybe he was a man capable of loving them both. That night, long after the fireflies had vanished, Clara whispered to her mother. Autumn crept across the prairie, painting the pastures gold. Life on the Hartwell Ranch settled into a rhythm Maggie had never thought she'd know again. She rose before dawn, the scent of coffee filling the kitchen. Clara would tumble sleepily out of bed, her laughter soft as she braided her doll's hair, while Luke tended to cattle in the chill morning air. By the time he came in, Maggie had a warm breakfast waiting, fresh biscuits, eggs, sometimes even apple fritters when she managed to trade with a neighbor. It was simple living, but it felt more like home than any house Maggie had known. Yet still, she kept a wall around her heart. Luke was kind, steady, protective. He never raised his voice, never demanded anything from her, never once made her feel unsafe. But Maggie feared if she let her guard fall, she might lose everything again. One evening, as she brushed Clara's hair before bed, the little girl said softly, "Mama, you smile more now. Is it because of Luke?" Maggie froze, comb in hand. "I smile because you're safe, darling. But you like him too, don't you?" Clara grinned, her gap-toothed smile mischievous. "When he looks at you, I think he likes you lots." Maggie's heart stuttered. She kissed her daughter's head, choosing silence over confession. But deep inside, she knew the girl spoke truth. Weeks later, the peace was broken. Maggie was gathering eggs when a shadow fell across the yard. She looked up to see Yates, the same cruel foreman who had sold her in town, riding through the gate with two rough men. Clara, playing with a wooden doll, ran to her mother. Maggie pulled her close, her blood running cold. "Afternoon, Mrs. O'Connor," Yates drawled, spitting into the dirt. "Or should I call you Mrs. Hartwell now? Word in town says the rancher's taken you in." Maggie stiffened. "What do you want, Mr. Yates?" "What's owed?" he sneered. "Your husband left behind debts. That coin Hartwell tossed at me didn't cover near enough. You and the girl are still assets, and I've come to claim what's mine." Maggie's breath hitched. She hugged Clara tighter. "No, you can't." But before fear could choke her, Luke's voice cut across the yard like thunder. "She's not yours to claim." Luke strode from the barn, towering, his shirt sleeves rolled, fists clenched. His eyes burned with a fire Maggie had never seen before. Yates smirked. "Hartwell, thought you'd hide up here forever. Don't matter how big your ranch is, law's on my side. Widow and her brat belong to me till those debts are paid." Luke stepped closer, his presence filling the space. "You listen to me, Yates. They're under my roof now. My care. You or anyone else tries to touch them, you'll answer to me." Tension crackled in the air. The men with Yates shifted nervously, aware of Luke's reputation with a rifle. "You can't keep her," Yates spat. Luke's voice dropped, deadly calm. "Watch me." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Yates cursed, yanked his reins, and wheeled his horse around. "This ain't over, Hartwell. You'll regret it." He and his men galloped out, dust rising in their wake. Maggie's knees gave way. She sank to the ground, clutching Clara. Tears streaked her cheeks. Luke knelt beside her, his hand hovering near her shoulder, uncertain if she'd allow his touch. "You all right?" She looked up at him through her tears. "Why did you do that? You've put yourself in danger." "I told you before," Luke said, voice rough. "I don't walk away again. Not when it matters." Maggie's heart pounded. He wasn't just protecting her out of duty, this was personal. She whispered, "I don't understand you." Luke held her gaze. "Then let me make it plain." That night, after Clara had fallen asleep, Maggie stepped onto the porch. The stars stretched endlessly above, the air cool with the scent of hay and pine. Luke stood at the rail, staring into the distance. She hesitated, then joined him. For a long while, silence lay between them, broken only by the chirp of crickets. Finally, Maggie spoke. "You could have turned us away that day in town. Most men would have. Why didn't you?" Luke's jaw tightened. He kept his eyes on the horizon. "Years back, I had a wife. And a son." Maggie's breath caught. "Bandits raided the place while I was out with the herd. I came home too late." His voice was flat, but every word carried grief. "If I'd been there, maybe they'd still be alive. I swore I'd never let something like that happen again. Not while I had breath left in me." Maggie pressed a hand to her mouth, her heart breaking. Luke finally turned, his eyes raw, unguarded. "When I heard Clara beg them to choose you, it near tore me apart. I saw myself in her, helpless to protect the ones I loved. I couldn't let her live that. Couldn't let you keep fightin' alone." Maggie's tears shimmered in the starlight. "Luke, I didn't just choose one of you," he said softly. "I chose both. And I'll keep choosin' you every day, if you'll let me." For the first time, Maggie let the walls around her heart crumble. She reached out, her hand trembling, and laid it on his chest. "I was so afraid," she whispered. "Afraid of trusting again. But you've given me and Clara more than safety. You've given us hope." Luke covered her hand with his, strong and steady. "Then stay. Not because you owe me, but because you want to." Maggie's voice broke. "I do want to." Their lips met, tentative at first, then sure, two broken souls finding wholeness together beneath the vast prairie sky. The days that followed were brighter. Maggie moved through the house with lighter steps, Clara giggled louder, and Luke, though still a man of few words, smiled more often. They worked side by side, mending fences, cooking meals, teaching Clara to ride a pony Luke had gentled just for her. Each simple act wove them closer, binding their lives like threads of the same cloth. But trouble lingered. Yates returned weeks later, this time with papers stamped by a traveling judge. He claimed the debts still gave him legal hold over Maggie and Clara. The entire town gathered as he stormed toward Luke's ranch. Luke didn't falter. He stood tall on the porch, Maggie at his side, Clara clinging to her skirt. "You can wave all the papers you want," Luke said, voice like steel, "but Maggie and Clara aren't property. They're family. Mine." The judge, seeing the fierce determination in Luke's eyes, hesitated. He glanced at Maggie, who lifted her chin. "Sir," she said firmly, "I am not for sale. My daughter is not for sale. My husband's debts died with him." The crowd murmured their agreement. Neighbors who once turned away now spoke up, shaming Yates for his cruelty. Under pressure, the judge tore the papers in two. Yates sputtered in rage but could do nothing as townsfolk forced him to leave. Maggie turned to Luke, tears streaming. "You called us family." Luke cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. "That's what you are." A month later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Maggie walked out onto the porch in a simple white dress Clara had helped stitch. Luke waited by the oak tree, his best shirt pressed, nervous as a boy. The preacher said the vows with only a handful of neighbors present. Clara stood proudly between them, holding both their hands. When Luke spoke his promise, his deep voice shook. "I choose you, Maggie. Always. And I choose you," she whispered back. Clara grinned up at them. "Now we're really a family." Because when the little girl had begged, "Choose my mama instead of me," the rancher had chosen love, for them both.